We move on with the program. We have just heard the farmer's perspective. Now we try to understand what is the veterinarian's perspective. And the speaker is representing actually a new country, Germany, but is Andreas Palzer. He is also very active within the Federation of Veterinarians in Europe, FVE, where he represents an international, global actually, organization, WHO. What is the name?
The World Health Organization I'm active in for the FEE, and then Medicine Working Group on the national
I
level.
thought it was a group within the WHO.
Yeah, in the WHO we are responsible. I was in the working group on the judgment on antibiotics reserved for humans.
Okay, yeah. Great. So basically, the outcome was this classification on critically important antimicrobials. Thank you, Andreas. And but Andreas is especially here because he is a pig veterinary practitioner. So I look forward to hear about the veterinarian's perspective. The floor is yours, Andreas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luca, for the nice introduction and for the possibility to speak here. Yeah, I was asked by FEE to be part. It was a shortly invitation. So I just wrote down my thoughts about antibiotic-free pig production. Let's say a lot of the technical issues we have heard this morning during the French presentation, the Danish presentations, and so on. I think this is part of my daily life as a pig veterinarian today, the technical issues. So I focused a little bit more on my thoughts about antibiotic-free production and my concerns and so on, and I will talk a little bit about this. And the first thing which came into my mind when I was asked to give a presentation about antibiotic-free pig production is this case. These are pictures from 2008 from South Africa, where I visited a pig farm, and there was a pig farmer who had also a slaughterhouse. And his own butchery, and he marketed his, every pig meat he produced was around about 100 sows. And all in the butchery you have found this labeling on the meat. So the meat is free of hormones, free of antibiotics, free of growth stimulant, abortant, and so on. But in the farm, I visited also the farm, you have found some cases. You can read it on the shield, treated with certain antibiotics, and there were pigs into the barn and asked, and he followed the concept, every pig which is treated got an ear tag and is separated from the others. But in his farm or in his butchery, he had two butcheries. The high-end butchery for the more or less rich people. These are all getting this labeling. And then apart, he had another butchery. This was the sheep butchery for the poor people, where he marketed all the meat of not so good animals, treated animals, and so on. And this shows for me already a little bit the problem which I see in the daily business. If you don't have two different markets which you can go in, so the high-end market, let's tell it, and the low-budget market, the low-end market, it is raising some problems. And also the wording, of course, he's talking about antibiotic-free, but in fact, in the farm, he was thinking about antibiotic-free production. He's missing, in my understanding, the word production. And I will come back to this because I think it is raising some problems if we talk about antibiotic-free and we are forgetting the word production. And the second thing I was thinking about, I had a very intensive discussion with a representative of human doctors in Germany. He also followed the concept of antibiotic-free production. His understanding of antibiotic-free production was if animals in the food production get sick, let's kill them. The farmer get a compensation, and we are forbidding any treatment with antibiotics in the whole production. This was his understanding of antibiotic-free production. Of course, as a veterinarian, I have some problems following such a concept because normally I have studied to heal people, to help animals and to get them healthy when they are getting sick. This is one of the key work of a veterinarian. So following such a concept, kill every sick animal, and so that we have no antibiotics used in the whole production, I think this is very difficult. Also, today we have already heard about a bit of these different things. In fact, the reduction of antibiotic treatments is the whole concept which we are following in the last years in the veterinary and in the production sector. So we are doing it in Europe more or less effectively. Some countries were earlier regarding such systems. Other countries are following. Today, in many countries, we have local systems to reduce the amount of antibiotics in the production system. Most of these systems are based on a certain pressure from the state on the farmers and on the veterinarians to optimize the production and to avoid treatment. So I think the whole concept as an idea of antibiotic-free is our main idea in the industry and from the veterinarian side in the last years in our consultancy. So the goal is to avoid any antibiotic treatment as we have certain reduction systems. If you have in other countries all over the world, if you don't have such reduction systems, then, this is my understanding of the worldwide production, antibiotics are used as a strategy in controlling and optimizing production systems, of course. If you are in certain countries and you see that they are still using growth-promoting antibiotics, they are doing strategic meditations and so on, you see that pig production can be very easy because if you have 2 or 3 growth-promoting antibiotics in the farm and then you do doing some strategic meditations, of course, it is more easy. So in Europe, we are already on a very specific way, in my understanding. Worldwide, the awareness of the need to reduce antibiotics is a little bit different. And the next point is we are working in a very complex system. So the overall goal for me is in everything which we are doing in the veterinary sector, in the food producing sector, but also in the small animal sector and so on. Of course, we are talking about antibiotic use, and we want to reduce this antibiotic use with the goal to optimize health of the animals and to reduce antimicrobial resistance in animals. But we are not doing it only for the animals. The main target of our work is the reduction of antimicrobial resistance in humans. This is the main question we have to answer, because this is the problem which we are working on. Antimicrobial resistance in animals is only a vehicle to talk about the real goal, which is antimicrobial resistance in humans. And this is a growing problem and a very big problem. But we are working in a very complex system. And today we are talking only about this small part, perhaps, if small. And we have to discuss how big is the influence of meat, for example, driven infections on antimicrobial resistance in humans. We have seen this in our classification of the antimicrobial classes. Very often this transmission route is not very well proven. Yeah, you have certain bacteria which are clearly transmitted by the food chain, but then you have the question, how big is the influence and the problem they are causing in humans on the problem in humans. And then it comes down that very often the influence is not so big. So this is a very complex system. And if we want to have the consumer to pay for it, normally we have to explain him what we are doing and why we are doing it, because only antibiotic-free is for me not enough. We are doing it to explain that the consumer understands we are doing it for the overall goal, antimicrobial resistance in humans, and then it becomes very complex. Is he understanding it? I have my doubts. What is, in my understanding, the current situation? So, regarding, for example, the definition antibiotic-free after weaning, I can say for the systems I'm responsible for, we have already a lot of pigs raised up without antibiotics after weaning. This is, we have a big class of animals and a lot of animals which are not getting any treatment because group treatments, for example, are as much reduced. It was presented by Jens-Peter Nielsen. This is one of the key issues to reduce in the first step, that we replace group treatments by treatments of single animals, because group treatments are causing a lot of antibiotic usage. So a lot of animals in Europe, I would say already today, are antibiotic-free. If we're going down to the suckling period, in my understanding it becomes a little bit more difficult, because then we are talking about such problems coming up like the umbilical hernia, which were already mentioned. And this is for me also clear as veterinarian, there will always be a need for antibiotic treatments. Also, this was clearly seen in the pictures out from Denmark. There will always be sick animals, because if you have some 100 animals at a farm, it was wondering if a whole year no animal would get sick. Yeah. So we have always a need to treat. And this is also in biological production systems cleared. Also there, animals are getting sick. I'm, for example, confronted with the situation that we have some strict regulations in the biological sector. For example, they are only allowed to treat animals once. If they are treating them twice, then they are losing their status as biological pigs. And this is, in my understanding, and we see it also in the farms, and it was also already discussed this morning a little bit, raising some problems. Because the farmer has to take now a situation, and the situation is mostly driven by economical questions. If I treat this animal now twice and it is losing his biological status, I'm losing money at that moment, because the biological piglet is already more expensive than the slaughter pig, which is conventional. So perhaps it can be, from economical standpoint, better not to treat animals and to go for the risk that, for example, the losses are a little bit higher, but I'm guarding the status as organic for my pigs. And also this is, in my understanding, also a very important question, which was also already raised this morning by Jens-Peter Nielsen. When do I start the treatment? So perhaps, I think as veterinarian, for me it is clear, if you see an animal become sick, as an early treatment is a very effective treatment, so you need to treat them as early as you can to control the disease. But if perhaps he says, yeah, I will wait some days, perhaps it will recover and it will not lose his status, could be from economical standpoint as better. From animal welfare standpoint as, in my understanding, it is negative. Because if I would have treated it early, I would have prevented 5 days of disease. So we have these questions regarding the ethical point. When to start, how much to treat, and how effective to treat. And I will come back to my example from the beginning. food safety, because I think the problem which will be occur in the communication with the consumer is that he is thinking antibiotic free means there's no antibiotic in the meat. This is the first association you have if you read on the label antibiotic free. But then it raises up the question, what is with all the other meat? Is it also, it is not antibiotic free. Is there antibiotic in the meat? But in fact, we have very effective control systems in Europe to control by the waiting time and everything that there is no antibiotic in the meat if everything is correct. And if you look on the numbers, these are numbers from Germany, out of the plan, you rarely find any antibiotic in meat. So the meat of all the pigs produced, more or less, is antibiotic free. A certain part is perhaps produced without antibiotics. But will the consumer really understand this differentiation? I don't think so. I think, and it is not enough if 30% or 50% of the consumers, which I think is very high numbers, understand our concept. Because if half of them are not understanding the concept, it will have a negative influence on the rest, in my understanding. So we need to have much higher level of knowledge in the consumer. And we see already in some other issues how difficult it is to explain something like that to the consumer. And it is even much more difficult to have the willingness of the consumer to pay more. So my thoughts are, if it only means I will not treat animals, I cannot go with. This is, in my understanding, a no-go. I can follow such a concept of antibiotic-free production if it means that we will think about how we can optimize our systems to avoid any treatment by guarding the animals healthy. This is, for me, clear. Of course, we have no cross promotion in Europe. This is a very clear standpoint. We don't need cross promotion. We can do it directly. And that, for me, it is clear if animals are getting sick, we must have the willingness of the farmer in such systems to correctly done the treatment of the sick animals. And then we are raising out the questions, how do we treat these animals? Can we perhaps start a treatment without antibiotics, but other medicines, of course, but as I have understood in the presentation of the WAND, these are all the questions raised in the WAND project. How can we replace it? How can we do it? But also, how do we start treatment, the timing? How do we treat them individual house group? And I have also the questions raised up for me. So how to communicate, I have already talked about. What means antibiotic-free and what understands the consumer. A little bit also, what is the marketing goal? I have some doubts regarding the marketing goal. And what will the consumer think about the campaign? So in summary, as veterinarian, I can follow the idea. And I think really in the pig production, in a lot of countries, pig veterinarians are following already the idea to optimize and their systems and to make a consultancy to reduce antibiotics to the absolutely minimum which is necessary. So the idea of antibiotic-free pig production, I can say I support the goal, as I think it is already in a lot of parts of the Europe, the goal of the consultancy. But even in the best and the healthiest production system, we will have sick animals and they need a treatment and they must be correctly. Regarding the marketing goal of antibiotic-free, there I'm very skeptic if it is really a good marketing goal. I have many concerns, I have many problems, I see many problems, and I don't wish to have a lot of negative impact on my industry, on my pig industry, because if we have also other issues. Let's take hormones. Yeah? We have forbidden in Europe all the hormone treatments. But if the meat comes from overseas, ironically, very often in these countries, hormones are nevertheless used. So if we will have a negative influence on the pig industry in Europe, and then we replace only the pig meat come from another country, and we don't know what exactly they are doing, I cannot support such a problem. So I have some concerns regarding the marketing goal of antibiotic-free. And this is will be my last question, at the end everything is a question of the economics. If I need a treatment and the economical burden is very high, then it makes sense, and we need to do it because economical means also losses of animals and so on. As I have already seen this morning, there is a lot of discussion about how many they are getting for the work, the extra work, and so on. At the moment, I must say, I always say to my farmers, you are following a concept of a very strict antibiotic reduction in Germany. And the farmers have done a lot. We have reduced, especially in the pig production, 80%. And this all for the overall goal to control antimicrobial resistance in humans. And this is a society question. The society wants the farmers to control the problem of antimicrobial resistance. But the society is at the moment not paying for it. All the financial burden to reduce antibiotics at the moment is paid by the farmers. Because there is this pressure out of the state, control pressure, etc., that they are doing it. But normally, if the society wants the farmer to target the problem and to solve it for their well-being, the society have to pay. And at the moment, it is not done. All the reduction which we are at the moment or in the last years have done in Europe was paid by the farmers, and this is, in my understanding, also a problem. So I think we have a lot to discuss in the plenary session today, and I'm finished with my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. So I follow as a non-expert. I'm a microbiologist. I didn't say that in the beginning. I'm trying to understand that there is a large consensus between all parties that this can be actually strategies to minimize the use of antimicrobials with no or minimal impact on animal welfare. We have this issue with the umbilical pouching. We will discuss it this afternoon, but in general, mortality and morbidity rates are in line with the conventional production. The main challenges I have identified two so far, and you have actually pointed out this very clearly at the end of your presentation, how to make this system profitable for the farmers. This is, I think, one main obstacle. And obviously, as you suggest, the society must somehow contribute to that. The farmer cannot pay the bill. And the second obstacle is how to send the message to the consumer. Because, as you said, if we go if we take the path of reducing antimicrobial use and preventing transmission to humans, it's very complex to transmit this piece of information. Maybe we will continue the discussion in the afternoon. It's easier actually to take the pathway of the animal welfare, because there are some figures that are quite impressive. For example, I know the ones that are available in Denmark about mortality. Overall mortality is about 25%, meaning that if you produce 40 million pigs per year, there are about 10 millions that die on the way, actually in the very early stages of life in most cases. So maybe that could be the Troy horse to vehiculate the message to the consumers, even if the goal is reducing EMU. That's just.
I think the problem is a little bit how do we approach this? And I can jetzt only make my summary of the discussion of this morning. The French approach and the Danish approach is a little bit different in my understanding, but perhaps you might correct me. In Denmark, the idea was we create a label And we look on farms, and then these farms try to produce antibiotic free. And of course, then you have a certain selection of farms. Only the good ones will say, I will follow it, and I will go into this label production. A bad farm, which a bad performance and a bad health status, will not go into an antibiotic free production because it makes no sense. But the French is a little bit different. They are working very hard in the consultancy on their farms, but on all the farms, as I have understood. And then they look on all the farms they have, and then they look how good they are in the health status and so on, that they are not using a lot of antibiotics. So they are selecting out the farms, and then these farms get a bonus because they are so good. So the system is a little bit different in my understanding, the approach, because in my practice, for example, I'm following the French approach. Of course, all the farms, we are trying in all the farms to reduce, because this is the daily business. And then only the good ones are those with a low antibiotic usage, of course, because they have a very good health status. So the question is a little bit, how do we approach the goal of antibiotic free? This is, I think, for the plenary discussion in this afternoon, a very important question.
Yeah, I completely agree. There are also some remarks to be made about the differences in the production system. So Coopel is a cooperative that basically cover from the farm to the packaging industry, whereas in Denmark you don't have such a system. You have more complex structure, so it is a little bit more difficult to implement this strategy. But anyway, I would say we have a lot of good points for discussion this afternoon.